I always thought this was just because he was a single parent, but even that seemed to only barely cover his odd behavior. He expected the best of me, expected my chores to be done, expected the rules to be followed, and if I didn't, there was only one punishment that would do. Dad never hit me with a belt. He never spanked me with his hand. He never took my stuff or put me in timeout. No, Dad had a different sort of punishment he used. He didn't introduce the jar until I was 6, and it was revealed with a lot of serious contemplation. I remember coming home from my first day of kindergarten and finding my dad sitting in the living room, the jar on the little end table where the magazines and rickrack usually stood. The jar may have begun life as a pickle jar. It always smelled a little of brine, and inside were beans. These were spotted pinto beans, the kind I had used on art projects and crafts since before I could remember, and I noticed they had been filled up to the brim. All in all, there were probably about 3 bags of beans in there, and a piece of Scotch tape declared it to be my jar. "Take a seat. We need to have a very serious talk," he said, and I ended up just sitting on the floor of our living room and looking up at him. He looked very serious, more serious than I had ever seen him before, and that scared me a bit. Up until now, Dad had always been this goofy guy who played pirates and astronauts and Mario Kart with me, but now he looked like a judge ready to sentence me to death if I didn't have a pretty good defense for my crime. "You are 6 now, long past knowing right from wrong. In this family, it is customary to use the bean jar to punish children. Do you see this jar?" he asked, like there was any way I could miss it. I nodded, and he smiled, seeming pleased. "The bean jar symbolizes you. It is everything you are and everything you might be. So from now on, when you are bad or insolent or you disobey my orders, I will not yell at you or send you to your room. I won't do anything but take a bean from the bean jar." I almost laughed. Was this a game or something? Was I supposed to be scared of a jar of beans? This had to be another one of Dad's jokes. Dad was always doing stuff like this, telling me how the monsters in my closet could be kept away by a teddy bear, or that the cavity creeps would eat my teeth if I didn't brush them twice a day. Dad was a goofball, he always had been, but I think it was his face that made me wonder if he was joking or not. Throughout the whole thing, he just sat there, deadly serious, and never averted his eyes from me. "You're a smart kid, just like I was, and I see now that you'll need an example. You may think this is just a regular jar, but you're wrong," he said, reaching in and picking up a bean. Dead wrong. He didn't even take it out. He just lifted a little, hovering it over the pile, but he didn't need to do anything else. Suddenly, miraculously, it felt like someone was touching my brain. It was the feeling of getting a sudden sadness, a sudden bit of anxiety, and I wanted him to drop that bean back in the jar. I needed to be whole. I needed all my beans, and he must have seen that on my face, because he dropped it back in, and I trembled as I tried to make sense of what had just happened. "I'm sorry, but you have to know what's at stake here. You're my last chance. I have to make sure that you are perfect, and the bean jar knows perfection from flaw. My own father used this method, and his father before him. The bean jar is always used until the child's 18th birthday, or until all the beans are gone. I was panting when I asked him what would happen if all the beans were gone. He looked at me without mirth and without any sign of a joke or a goof. "You don't want to know.